Arteta! What a strike! What a screamer! Zola! And a fantastic goal! Arsenal back in it! And here's Limpar, lines it up, finds the net. Arsenal in front.
Newcastle push Arsenal all the way to extra time before being reminded of the rule that you actually can't eliminate Arsenal from the Arsenal Invitational. This is the Arsenal Vision post-match podcast. My name's Elliot Smith. You can block me on Twitter, Yankee Gunner. How many times can I say Arsenal in one intro? Well, I've done it again. But it is the Arsenal Invitational, sometimes known as the FA Cup. It is our trophy, and Newcastle were reminded of that. Granted, 120 minutes it took for them to get their reminder, but got it. They did nonetheless. And I just want to say thank you for everyone being here. As a reminder, we are trying our best to do what Arsblog does, only, more ham-fistedly. That includes two things. One is supporting Arsenal businesses. So we have partnered with Arsenal Editor, a great designer. Nils is wonderful, great Arsenal fan, and he has a business creating Arsenal designs, posters, shirts, mugs, things of that nature. And you can actually shop for his stuff right on our website if you want to, arsenalvisionpodcast.com/shop, or his. The choice is yours, as they say in English. But the other thing we're trying to do is emulate what makes the Arscast special, which is not the football analysis or discussion, but of course the pleasant waffle between participants at the beginning of the podcast. So I'm going to endeavor to do that today. And I listened to the Arscast, Tim. So I think I've got this down. Tim is on Twitter at Stoberto. Hello, Tim.
Hello there.
Tim, I ate some food today. Did you eat any food today?
I did. I ate a very popular franchised chocolate bar, or candy bar, as you would say, stateside.
Was it of any particular color that was interesting, or would you like to indulge me in banter about the food you consumed?
No, thank you.
Okay, well, I appreciate your cooperation in this matter. Clive is on Twitter at ClivePAFC. Hello, Clive.
Hello.
Clive, would you like to submit any information regarding food you have ingested, or perhaps beverages you have consumed?
Nope, the list will be too long, and I'm much more interested in the football.
Well, I thank you for this pleasant banter. I, too, have consumed food and beverages. Okay, so I think that was pretty close, right, guys? Like, it feels like we're nailing it. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Well,
absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you, Tim. Okay, Clive, I'm going to start with you. Look, it is the FA Cup, and rotation was to be expected. I mean, I am really fine for the most part in the third round of the FA Cup with the manager picking any side he wants, with an eye towards protecting players that needed protection. And to be fair, I think I was just about okay with Aubameyang starting. I'm not sure about Tierney. I think if Arteta knew that they were going to go 120 minutes, he might have done it a little differently. He probably didn't want to put that many minutes into their legs. Obviously, the Martinelli injury was unfortunate, but it gives us a chance to look at a heavily rotated side with a lot of quality in it, maybe or maybe not. And I think that was really what we wanted to see. And ultimately, I think we got our answer on a lot of players. But for me, the story of the match early on has to be about Willian, Clive. And I hate to just dive into that right away, but the reason I want to is you've got Elneny and Willock in central midfield. Willock's a young player, sort of scuffling for form. I don't think he's a central midfielder. He'd much rather be playing the role that Willian was given, I think. Elneny is a safe, conservative passer who's not going to drive you forward. You have a guy in Cedric playing fullback who's never going to give you the kind of dynamism and attacking capabilities that like a Hector Bellerin does. You have Reece Nelson, a guy in the team who not playing a lot lately, just back into the team and didn't look like he was really in form. You have basically a low-touch player at striker in Aubameyang, so he's not going to contribute much. So this is it. This is Willian on a big contract, brought in to be able to add some things between the lines. We talked about it in preseason. No, he's not going to be right wing. That's Pepe's spot. Well, it was Pepe's spot in this game, and Willian got to play that 10 role again. And given that there was a dearth of, I think, connective tissue in the side, given that there was a dearth of really dynamic talent that can get on the ball and do something, I think there was a lot of opportunity here for Willian to take that burden. And rather than take it, he looked like he wanted nothing to do with it. So, do you think that is a fair characterization, and that his failure to really impose himself on this game is a big reason why things were so stale early on?
Yeah, I do think so. 7 changes made for this game. So when you make 7 changes, we know the names, and we all immediately expect them to reach their top level. But it's hard, right? Because they haven't played, haven't got any rhythm, haven't got any minutes. And so we find it tough. And players like Willian, when we assess them, we tend to assess them in how they arrived in the room. And his recent performances have made us concerned. Issues around the deal have made us concerned, particularly his wages, etc. So we judge him accordingly, right? So he's had some indifferent performances out wide, maybe some not as bad as people have said, but we still expect a little bit more, right? Because he played for the enemy, always seemed to do well for them. Why isn't he doing well for us? Is he taking a piss out of us, basically, by taking the money and not doing much? So we've got concerns about him. I do feel with Willian, one of his better performances was the Sheffield United game when he moved into 10. And so when I saw this team, I thought, okay, there's a couple of players here for me that are on trial, big trial. Joe Willock was one, playing a double pivot, and Willian playing in the 10. Because if you're the coach now, you got to be looking at solutions to try to add depth to your squad. We got a lone player in Ceballos playing a double pivot. We got potential issues depending on what week it is with Elneny and Xhaka. We got our major signing, and we've only played 2.5, 3 games, wherever it is. So in that midfield 4, we need some work from Joe Willock. We need something else from Smith Rowe in the 10. Big day for Willian. But we mentioned the other week about Smith Rowe. We sort of said, well, I said that basically what I liked about him is that he gives the team what they require. And so if he needs to go and drop into a double pivot and make slide tackles in his box, he does that well. If he needs to get out with Tierney, he does that. If he needs to get out with Bellerin, he does that. If he needs to get around Lacazette, he does that. He provides exits for Xhaka and he provides, exits for Elneny. Willian now, I think, plays in there with a different mindset. He looks to try to get on the ball and just keep the ball moving. But I know he's not. He's not as hungry to get on the ball. He doesn't have the same energy, enthusiasm, and body language that says, give the ball to me, I'm going to save you. He doesn't do that. He tends to go into areas which I feel he's more comfortable in. So he starts off in a central role and immediately he wants to go and get the ball on the outsides. Because why? He spent most of his life on the outsides, right? So as Tim has told us many, many times, most of his life on the right-hand side. And I always thought it was a bit more of a balance to that. But he's obviously happier starting in the middle, not having central responsibility. I'm going to shoot off out here and just try to create overloads outside. Whether that was coaching, whether that was him, but I don't think his body language told me that he was going to save the day for us in the middle of that pitch. It was a bad day for Willian because at 32, I'm not expecting you to do 40-yard doggies on the outside of the pitch anymore. If we're in charge, we've got teams pinned back, you can play wide. But this role is important. You're in the interior. You've got to be the brain. You've got to be the connector. I don't think he showed enough energy, and I don't think he showed enough intent to connect us in more than just the areas he feels comfortable with. And that tells me from a player psychology point of view, you can't be entrusted with that role because the team needs more from you. And so I think it's a bad day for him.
Yeah, and Tim, I want to get your thoughts on it as well. I mean, I don't want to make this a Kick Willian podcast. There's a lot of other interesting things to talk about here, performances that I think are worthy of discussion. But, the reason I framed it the way I did is it is a team that he picked that, aside from Pepe, really, is crying out for someone to move the ball forward, to connect the lines, to create the opportunities. And, Aubameyang is a star player, but he's not going to touch the ball a lot. I thought Pepe actually did a lot of good work that we can come to, freeing himself from double teams and putting balls in over the top that maybe could have been better handled. But otherwise, when you look at that midfield behind him of Willock and Elneny, there's going to be responsibility falling to Willian. And this is a really good opportunity for him to sort of start to rewrite the narrative around him, because there is an open space available for a guy who replaces Smith Rowe as a rotational option, given that Smith Rowe cannot play every game the rest of the season. So it feels like a missed opportunity for a player whose entire Arsenal career looks like a missed opportunity to this point.
Yeah, absolutely. I said this on the instant reaction pod, so I won't go over it too much, but this was the first game I really felt like Willian's confidence just looked low. I think there are definitely elements to which this team just doesn't suit him tactically, which really begs questions of the recruitment. We've already talked to death about why did you give a 32-year-old 3 years when you've given 31-year-old Aubameyang 3 years, but actually, I can't really understand why they thought Willian would really fit in. Like when we signed him, I thought, oh, okay, Arteta must just really want, we kind of, not sure if complained is the right word, but we talked about Pepe last season in that kind of 5 lanes of attack and how he was too far over to the touchline, where he really wants to be more of an inside forward. And so when we bought Willian, I thought, oh, okay, that's probably because Arteta wants someone on the right who stays near the touchline, and that guy is Willian. Like if you want to bring in someone who does that, that's Willian. Why they've brought him in to now do something completely different, and to be honest, something that suits Pepe much more. They seem to be playing him as this kind of wandering part over on the right, and I'm looking at it and I'm just thinking, so like that suits Pepe much more than Willian. So like you were asking Pepe to do like Chelsea Willian's job last season, and now you're asking Willian to do a job that would suit Pepe. I really don't get it. I can't. Putting aside the age and the length of the contract, I just can't understand the way we've used Willian. I just don't understand it at all. I think it's really, really poor. And it speaks very poorly to everyone that signed off on this move, because I just don't understand why they've got him doing this stuff that he's never ever done before in his career. When I saw that kind of front three, and I kind of thought, well, okay, that looks like Willian's going to be number 10. I didn't like it, to be honest. And I think it says something about how Willian's stock has fallen, and quite rightly it's fallen, because if you're playing in the second string, the cup team, and you're still not in your position, that kind of says something. I mean, it was possibly worthwhile as an experiment, just because we're not exactly blessed with number 10s
right
at the moment. But I really struggle to see why they think Willian is that player. He's not, in my view. And so like I have had an element of sympathy with him about that. And I kind of, a big part of me thinks this isn't really his fault. This is the club's fault on many levels, on the footballing level and the financial level. There have been games where I've looked at him and thought, like, come on, like you're not putting it in enough. But to be honest, I did like a little experiment with myself today, and I was thinking, picture Willian sprinting, and it's weird. This sounds like a really weird thing to say. I know he does it. I know he like,
can't picture what it looks like.
Even I'm thinking, yeah, exactly. I know he does it, like, because for Chelsea and for Brazil, he'd always been renowned as a very hard worker, gets back, helps his fullback. But you know what I mean? I can't picture Willian sprinting. He always looks like he's kind of both when he's playing well and when he's not playing well, and maybe it counts against him as well, people's impression of his form. When he's playing well, it looks like he's got a swagger, and when he's not playing well, it looks like he's running through treacle. And it's really weird, I just tried to put that picture in my head, and I was like, not even in an Arsenal shirt. Think of, all the games you watched him for Brazil and Chelsea. Imagine him sprinting, and I just can't see it. And so that's not an excuse. I'm not trying to make an excuse for him, but do you know what I mean? I think he is a player who generally gets through a lot of work. He just doesn't necessarily look like he is all of the time. But there have been games where I've thought, like, come on, like you're not doing enough here. You're not doing enough to dig yourself out of a hole. But this was the first game where I thought, no, this guy's confidence is just low. Like he was just messing up stuff that he doesn't usually mess up. Just like one touch passes, trapping the ball. His shoulders look very, very low at the moment, and I think he knows that. He has to know he's not playing well. He's not stupid. He understands perfectly well that he's not playing well, and if he didn't understand it before, he definitely understands now. With Saka playing on the right and Martinelli coming back in, he understands this team is passing him by. But I guess the thing is, you have limited patience with a 32-year-old, and again, whether that's his fault or the club's. You do not get a 32-year-old who has been in the Premier League for 7 years because you expect them to have loads of adaptation time. It looks to me like it's not so much an adaptation case here. I just think this team just doesn't suit him.
Yeah.
And we're seeing it.
Can I add a little bit on this one?
Please, yeah.
I think obviously we spoke in instant reaction with him that the problem statement when he was signed, we didn't have Martinelli, and Smith Rowe was a youth guy coming back from Huddersfield, right? So there was room for another player in that three behind the striker, wherever he played. So the problem statement was there for him. But this is a player that perplexes me a little bit because I've never looked at him too closely, but never had anything but good things to say about him previously. So statistically, I'm not, Elliot, you may know more than me, but I read somewhere about a week or so ago that he's had the most completed last third passes for Arsenal. Now, this is where statistics and what your eyes are telling you can tell you two different things. I can see why Arteta potentially wants to try him there because he's quite secure. He may not want to try Pepe in there because you lose the ball in the centre of the pitch. Although I would love to see Pepe playing there. Lose the ball in the centre of the pitch, that gives you problems on transition. So he wants a secure player in there. Somebody doesn't get caught on the ball. And so statistically, he looks quite good. But actually, with my eyes, he looks terrible. Right? So I think it's one of those things where you're trying as a coach, you feel that everybody is fixable. Nobody's beyond your skill set. Whenever I look at players, I think I can fix them all. Right? That's when, and he is one of those, you think, well, I must get something out of him. Let me try to put him into areas where he can do well. So I can see why it's happened. I can't see why we signed him reasonably fully to get the money we signed him out, and the deal was another podcast. But there's something about this player that's not quite adding up. The numbers might say he's better than what he's actually showing us on the pitch.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think the issue, and I want to move on from Willian, but I think the issue is just if this wasn't going to work, if this way didn't work, as a sort of 10 where he could be given a decent amount of responsibility, the opposition wasn't particularly stiff, like there were opportunities for him here, and you don't love to go into the question of like, is he trying? I don't love the trying narrative because you just don't know, but it certainly doesn't look like a guy who is burning to impress. And this is the danger, I think, when you sign a 32-year-old from Chelsea, when you're a Europa League team, he's not playing at the absolute top of the table. He's not playing on the biggest stages. He's a Brazilian national team player who's won it all, seen it all, been there, done that, and now he's stepping down, as painful it is to say that. At the end of his career, he's not playing for his next contract. He's been given big money, and it does look a lot like an annuity for him, just like a nice, comfortable landing place. And like, I don't know how a player motivates himself. So much of elite sport is players motivating themselves to achieve things at the absolute highest level. And I don't know what his motivation to achieve things is right now. And he doesn't look like a player who's trying. Now, look, it could also just be that he's too old, that he's not good enough, that, he's starting to decline physically. I have to say, you guys, watching Andy Carroll, I found myself thinking, gosh, that old guy's still around? Like, it's painful. Like, he's still playing. Shouldn't he be retired? And like, he's younger than Willian. You know what I mean? So like, this is a guy who's really at the tail end of it in a very serious way. And it does pose a problem for us, obviously. I mean, at a time when we think Mesut Ozil's wages are coming off the books, I do think it is interesting to look at how we're going to make use of this, because I don't want to go into this conversation now. There'll be international breaks and stuff where we can hypothesize about all kinds of scary things. But I am trying to look into the future and say, based on this showing and the emergence of Smith Rowe and, having tried him in a few places now, where is the future of this player at Arsenal who's really just arrived? So that'll be one to keep track of. But, well, Clive, I'll stay with you for a second. I mean, I think one of the other things that doesn't help, this game to me broke down a lot to just like Tierney on the left basically being the playmaker and Pepe on the right basically trying to do things on his own, because there were so few other people that could get involved and link the play and make it happen. And central midfield was obviously a really big part of that. We saw later when Xhaka came on how impactful he was just with tempo and directness, pushing the ball forward. With El Neni, we know what we have. I don't think that we need to put the boot in El Neni. It just, to me, he is a player that we know really, really, really well. Very conservative, very safe, does not give you the ability to push the ball forward and put teams under threat. Joe Willock is a player that I think would rather have had Willian's role. He didn't have it. This was a game that I think he really struggled in. As we start to see the elite level that some youngsters are hitting, a Martinelli, a Saka, a Smith Rowe, do we have to really start to make decisions about players like a Willock and like an Nketiah? Because right now, rumors are that, we're turning down bids from West Ham, that he's going to stay, that he's in our plans. We don't want to move him on. Now that can just be negotiating. But like, at some point, some of these young players aren't going to make it. We have to make a decision. So I'm curious if you started to figure some things out about Willock now and about, maybe if his future lies a little bit lower down the table.
I'm not sure, but he does need to learn and recognize what he is at the moment. I think he's caught between a number of positions, right? So they tried him in double pivot. I don't think it worked very well. I don't think he's comfortable in space. We spoke about this the other day. I think if you watch the videos of him closely now from a deeper position, when he's in space on the angle to receive the ball, he runs through it. He wants to go. He almost plays the pass plus one. He wants someone else to get it to then give it to him. But when you're playing double pivot, you're the next pass mate. So stand still. So he has to work that out. He hasn't got that worked out. When he plays number 10, it's a 10. He's a breakaway 10. I'm going to break to get near centre forwards, break past them, get into areas where I can affect the play. So he can run little angles off a triangle into the half space on the right-hand side primarily, but sometimes on the left. And he goes straight for the penalty spot when we progress the ball in wide areas. That's quite simple for him. Little triangle. I can use my athleticism to get to this spot to go and do stuff. Right, so great. When you're playing in the first team at Premier League level, you got to have more to your game, more layers, more angles, more metronomic play. You've got to have, if you watch him run, I promise you, watch him run, he never looks over his shoulders. Never looks over his shoulders. He looks at the prize where I got to get to. When I get there, I'll do something quite clever. Right, so he just needs to play and have minutes, but also needs to define himself. Right, so now you could say, well, is that going to be at Arsenal? Not so sure anymore. Not so sure. I look at these young players, and I said before, I don't think they're the problem at the club. Whether they're developed or not, they're not the problem. They're not the biggest problem. The fact we got a 20-year-old, 21-year-old that's doing quite well, played over 50 appearances for the first team, played for under 21s, doing okay. Not quite shining out like the other two youngsters, we've got three youngsters that we have, but you're doing fine. We need to develop you. There are lots of players like that around the league. There are players like that in the Championship. There's a player at West Brom I mentioned before, Conor Gallagher, playing in centre midfield, running around for West Brom, doing fine, having good days, having bad days. Todd Cantwell at Norwich, similar type player, running around loose, learning his game, having good days and bad days. Joe Willock's one of those, right? So maybe he'll end up at Norwich. Maybe he will. But at this moment in time, he's not developing as quickly as we'd like. But it doesn't mean it won't happen for him, because the development curves are different for each player. Similar to Nketiah as well. Good days, bad days. Doesn't look so good against our on form Lacazette. But he quite rightly took him out last season, on form and energy and pressing. That's what we need at that moment in time. So it can fluctuate. I'm loath to give up. I'm loath to give up on young British players, homegrown players that we have contracted. And the squad rules are saying keep hold of these guys. But I do think it's important that we speed their development with loans. And maybe they could, he said he's not going to let Nketiah go, but Willock, I'd like to see him go somewhere. I'd like to see him go somewhere and test himself. Sometimes people can get too comfortable. Go somewhere, test yourself. I don't see any reason why Maitland-Niles couldn't have played in centre midfield at the weekend. We learned more about him. I think we've learned a lot about Willock. I think there's a lot of chances in those areas, and I can't see the jump happening every time you play for Arsenal. Go somewhere, learn, find it tough, find out about yourself, see if you can unlock some more layers in your game.
Yeah, selling is rarely the wrong move. And not to get all the way down this cul-de-sac, but we have this pathological fear of moving players on, and it's almost never the wrong move. Like you say, oh, what about Serge Gnabry? Well, Serge Gnabry, we didn't want to sell. We didn't have a choice at that point. Like, he had us dead to rights, and Bayern Munich were behind the whole thing. The machinations were there. The player knew what was going on. We didn't have a choice. But selling Oxlade-Chamberlain wasn't wrong. Selling Alex Iwobi wasn't wrong. Right? I mean, selling these players is just not wrong. What's wrong is losing players with no value or letting their value erode. And, if people are willing to give you good money for your young players who don't look like they're quite at the level, then take it. Because the next ones will come along. And is Balogun gone? I mean, Tim, I think this is where these things, start to materialize. Just like we talk about, should Joe Willock, move on? Should Eddie Nketiah move on? Well, Balogun's in a position where And Balogun may not be very good either, but we've lost any leverage there, any ability to really monetize him, whether it's as a part of our team or as an asset to sell on. Were you surprised not to see him in the squad, and do you take that as a pretty clear indicator of what's going to happen with that situation?
I'll answer the latter point first. I mean, yes, I do. I think I said on the pod on Friday that the selection around that would probably tell you a lot. And the fact that Balogun wasn't in the squad and Nketiah was, I think that tells you the way that things are going to go down, and have probably already gone down. So there's that. And Arteta's also said fairly unequivocally, and I don't take this as a bargaining position per se, that he said that Nketiah won't go this month. So that seems that, like, the only way, I think, not the only way, like, unless there was a ridiculous offer made, but I think the only way, I think had Nketiah gone this month, you probably would have said, well, yeah, that there's at least a chance with Balogun. My own view is that shouldn't be a consideration, particularly given the length of Nketiah's contract that is left. I still think that's quite a short-termist decision to kind of keep him on. I mean, I guess maybe it's tied to the Martinelli thing, and we'll see how long he's out injured for. But still, I still kind of think if there's a good offer there, just do it. Like, I think we've put ourselves in a position now where we've made so many poor calls around this that we kind of have to. A bit like we did it with Emi Martinez, right? Like, we kind of didn't want to, but we had to, and a lot of that was about raising money, and that's because we just keep getting this wrong. And so when we do get offers like that, we kind of have to take them, and I think it's the same here. And with regards to, like, the likes of Willock and Nelson, I think they should. I mean, again, it depends on what kind of offers are out there. I think they should both go somewhere in January, and that might be, again, that will be entirely dependent on the offers. If someone puts up good money, we should sell. If not, we should certainly look at loaning them. Largely, I think, to build their value a little bit. Reece Nelson, I think, is coming up 50 games for Arsenal. Willock has passed that. Like, we know what's there. We're quite stacked in the wide attacking positions, because I don't think Willian's going anywhere, whether we like it or not. Like, Nelson was called up at the last minute for this game, and the fact, again, that he couldn't get in, the cup team without an injury kind of says where he is in the pecking order. So that kind of tells its own story, really. I don't get the impression that Arteta would be reluctant at all at any kind of offer to come in for Reece Nelson. I think he's made quite clear with how much or how little he rates Reece Nelson, which I'm kind of fine with, to be honest. I don't think it would be like a massive error or anything to let him go. I kind of think, again, it depends on the offers, but I kind of think with these guys, some of them had like good games in the early rounds of the Cup. Willock had a really good Europa League group stage. There's your value right there. But then again, this January market will be impacted by the fact that fans are not coming back into stadiums this season. Like, with the way the COVID situation is in the UK, that is not going to happen for the rest of the season. So that has an impact on clubs' bottom lines, and most of them are going to have to dish out refunds in May, because a lot of them have kind of taken some season ticket down payments that they're probably going to have to give back. And therefore that will have an impact, I think, on the January market as well. So it might not entirely be in Arsenal's hands. And I like with Nketiah, I don't know how much truth there is in the West Ham interest. I mean, if West Ham are sniffing around him, we should absolutely be trying to cultivate that interest, not least because West Ham have a long and storied history of doing stupid things and spending stupid amounts of money on strikers. And not least because they bought Sebastian Haller, and they've taken a massive hit on him already to get him out the door in January, and that implies a sense of desperation, and that once again they've spent a stupid amount of money on a striker who isn't a bad striker, but one they just can't seem to use. So I feel like Arsenal and West Ham is like that Spider-Man meme at the moment, like both of us looking at each other, yeah. Going like you're a stupid club as well. You look like you'll spend 25 million on this guy. Yeah,
look at this asshole.
Yeah. And you guys can have one of our unwanted overpaid players. But so I think that does say something about Balogun. Yes. I do wonder if the Martinelli injury is governing the situation with Nketiah. I don't honestly see us being in a position where we absolutely have to use Nketiah when we've got Aubameyang, Lacazette, Martinelli. And Willian's played false 9 this season, so yay. And look, but Balogun is still there till the end of the season.
It's not like you can't use him. Yeah, even if he's off. Yeah, I think the idea that you're going to turn down real money, the kind of money that you'd be happy to get for Eddie Nketiah, because maybe he's a third choice striker that you'll need in the fourth round of the FA Cup. Like,
too cautious.
Yeah, too cautious. And too.
No, I don't think they would turn it down, to be honest. Because
I don't. Yeah, I'm not saying they would. I'm just saying I don't think that would be a reason to.
Yeah, his contract is a year to go in the summer, so if they get a good offer of him in January, they're going to take it. No matter what he says, they're going to take it. He's not going to say, well, he could go this month.
Arteta has a real affection for him, though. I mean, he kept him at the club last season instead of letting him go out on loan. Sometimes these things matter. I mean, it's clear Arteta doesn't rate Nketiah the way, Nelson the way he rates Nketiah, and we might be scratching our head at that. I know I am, but that matters, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does matter. I've heard he's fine. I just think, well, also not talking to him now, about a new contract, as far as I'm aware. Right, so I watched Brighton playing the FA Cup yesterday. Boy, they could do with Nketiah at centre forward. They really could. So could West Ham. They could do with him. There are teams that, I bet you he's going to have people knocking his door down. Teams that need to readjust their position in the table. He's got a good rep, So let's see what happens. I don't think that story's dead yet. I think he could end up going somewhere. If not now, definitely in the summer. Because unless Arsenal are going to open contract talks, I don't think so. So what's his space on that one, in my opinion?
Yeah, ultimately, pulling your hair out about any of these guys going is probably silly, because the odds that any of these guys we've had a pretty good look at are suddenly going to burst out and become world beaters in the near future. It's really unlikely. I mean, I don't think there are a lot of examples of us having players leave the club and go on to be excellent, having not been excellent for us. So I'm not, at least not in the recent past. So I'm not going to pull my hair out about that. I certainly think we're in a position where we need to bring in cash for players that are not taking us to the level we want to go, and not be shy about that. So let's talk about a player we did spend some cash on, though, Clive, and who we're still scratching our heads about a little bit, and that's Nicolas Pepe. I regarded this as a pretty good Pepe game. He had a lot of nearly moments. First of all, he had a ball over the top, an in-swinger. He kind of beats a man. He puts it over the top. He spots a really good Nelson run. I was harsh on Nelson initially. I thought he did really poorly with it. It takes a hard bounce off the ground and comes up a little higher, which makes it harder to control. But he put 2 balls into Nelson like that were really good. He had one drive to the byline where he beats a man, he gets into the box, and you could just see him want it on his left foot so bad. He would not hit it with his right. Wouldn't. And I do think that that's a big issue for Pepe, because when he drives to the end line, he can't get the cross in. He has to cut it back to his left. He had the one move where he beat 2 defenders. He could have been a foul, but he stays on his feet, does the hard part, gets to the top of the box, and hits that left-footed curler that normally is his bread and butter, but he didn't quite catch it right. A lot of nearly moments for him, but I think given that his service was a right back who we don't particularly regard as being very good in Cedric, a number 10 who was out to lunch, central midfielders who weren't really progressing the ball, and a striker who's not going to do the kind of 1-2 stuff that a Lacazette might do, in Aubameyang, guy who wants to run into the space. I felt that he and Tierney really had a lot of responsibility to just manufacture the attacks. And overall, I thought he did fine. It does have to be frustrating for Pepe in that when the players come in who could maybe unlock his potential, he doesn't really get to play with them, in a Smith Rowe, for example. So did you regard this the way I did as sort of an encouraging Pepe game, or are you more inclined to see the parts of the day that didn't materialize for him?
Yeah, he must be softening, because I'm glad you said that. Because he's one of the players that I really like, not because he's perfect, because he's imperfect, and he's an imperfect talent, and another one of those broken soldiers I'd love to try to fix, right? Because the things he does well are not teachable, They're just really not, And some of the easy stuff is what he needs to do. And I think what Saka's shown us is the simplicity of what he does on that side. He just receives the ball, gets his body shape right, knocks it off, runs in behind. Sometimes he goes for a dribble, but it's a dribble in a straight line. He goes round the corner, bang, knocks it off, gets it back, shifts position. He's quite simplistic. I think Pepe sometimes feels he's got to beat 3 people. And if I was coaching him, I'd just say, first 3 minutes, no more than 2 touches. 15 minutes, get yourself into the game. 2 touch, 1 touch. If you do more than 2 touches, I'll murder you. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. What I look for is things like, in the first few minutes of this game, we went straight in behind. That was really encouraging. That means we were trying to push them back. And I like to see him. When he goes in behind, I think that's good, because now you're creating space to get the ball on the dribble. So vary what you do on the ball. Keep it simple. There's a story about Manchester United many, many years ago that Fergie used to say, no more than 1 or 2 touches. Only person who can have more than that is Ryan Giggs. The only one. Everyone else, more than 2 touches, get the ball in. And Gary Neville got murdered by Roy Keane once for having 2 touches before he cleared it. Simplicity drives certainty of movement. People then move when they know the ball's coming. I think with Pepe sometimes the ball goes in and it stops too long. People stop moving. With Saka, strangely enough, there's a simplicity and a fluidity about when the ball goes in. It comes through him quickly and we can move from there. The reason why I wasn't sure about Wilfred Zaha, though I liked him, we watch him play, he stops the ball, does a dance, gets on the stage, he doesn't know when the ball's coming out. Right? So Pepe, I always felt he was less than Zaha with that, but now we've got a close look at him. I think he just needs to simplify his game, do the easy stuff, then ping away, get yourself on the move, then you're a danger. But I'm glad he said that, because I thought him and Aubameyang showed real signs of returning. And I tweeted out in the game, Aubameyang's coming back. He scored 20 minutes later, but you can see by his movement that he's coming back. Forget the execution, his movement was good. Same with Pepe, his movement was good. His execution was very much the same. But the potential to get the shots, the crosses, Willock missed the header. That was an assist for him. Clear assist, he missed a header. But there's signs there, so I was quite pleased. I'm glad you were in it.
Yeah, I was. And I think, we have gone a long way around the bend from expecting him and demanding him to play in a way that justifies his price tag to now looking for slivers of hope. I get that. And I tweeted my thoughts, which are basically incomprehensible nonsense, but I will tell you what they are. Which is basically that every time I watch him, I feel like I'm watching a player who is one game away from breaking out into a massive talent. Like you see it. You see that he can beat a man. You see that he can deliver a quality ball. You see that he can strike the ball well. The ability to execute the moves at the speed and the timing and the level and the accuracy, the precision that's needed at that level, it's just not quite there, but you feel like it could be. I want to feel like it could be. So I'm gonna remain optimistic that there's a possibility there. And if Martinelli is injured for more than 10 seconds, which I hope he is not, and Aubameyang has to move back to the left, and Lacazette keeps his space up front, which I think he has sort of regained as the first choice option for the number 9, Pepe has a path to play on the right if Saka can't play every game. Now, Saka might play every game, so Pepe may not have an option, but I would like to see him get a chance to play on the right with Smith Rowe in there and Lacazette in there and players he can combine off a little bit more, Hector Bellerin, just players that will set him up for a little bit more success, because I still think there's a benefit if we can coax out a real performance from him and get his Arsenal career back on track, whatever limited chance there may be for that to happen. If you want to get back on track, though, I think the one thing, look, you can do it by getting Pepe going. You can do it by moving out players that have had their chance and bringing in new players. But sometimes the way to get back on track is just to refresh, is to renew, is to shave your privates. And while that wasn't my best segue, I've done it and now I'm going to commit to it. Shave your privates. That's it. That's the message. Just shave them. I shaved mine. You shave yours. That's it. We're all agreeing. We're all just going to shave our privates. And so then you say, well, how am I going to do that? Well, you're not going to do it with some rusty razor that's been sitting in your shower for 3 months. I mean, here's the funny thing, right? About these sponsorship things, this advertisement for this wonderful product called the Lawnmower 3.0 from Manscaped. I realize that it is an awkward as hell thing for me to be talking about. I get that. But I I have to level with you. This is a thing we do. Like, we do this. We all do it. We shave some part of our body. Not all of us, fair. Okay, fine. You know, if you're a furry or whatever, then no. But so the question is like, what are you going to use? And then it comes down to like, you're going to use a razor that's not purpose built for it. You're going to use some trimmer that doesn't work in the shower. So you're trying to do it dry, and then like there's hair everywhere, whatever the case may be. And, you know, you just, then you step on it, and then you look like a hobbit from the movies because you got hair on your feet. And anyway, this is going around the bend a little bit, like a lot of my points do. But I think what I'm saying is I'm talking about something that we all do. So get a product that does it really well. Like, that's it. Because you're going to do it. It's the Lawnmower 3.0. The ceramic blade is awesome. The battery life is insanely long. The stand it sits in is really like cool. It looks very science fiction-y, and it charges up, and you know, then you can bring it in the shower. It's wet dry, so it's just in the place you need it to be when you need it there, right? Not going to get cut or nicked. It has a guard, so you can do eyebrows, you can do, you know, chest, you can do whatever part of you needs to be refreshed and renewed. But the most important thing is that, you know, it's something you're going to do, so you might as well do it well. And you can go to manscaped.com, promo code ArsenalVision. You'll get 20% off and free shipping. And no, this is not a Kit Kat sponsorship. You know, I realize candy's important. I realize the Arscast, they like their candy, they like their Lay's, they like their salty, they like their sweet. But you know what? What could be sweeter than when this pandemic is over to run into the street and take our pants off and show each other our beautiful shaved privates? I look forward to that moment. We could do it on Zoom, but I'd rather do it in person. So we'll look forward to that. Manscaped.com, promo code ArsenalVision, 20% off and free shipping. I mean, there it is. That's the message. Message received, hopefully. I hope you will do it. Please do. Manscaped.com. Promo code ArsenalVision. All right, that is more than enough of that. Clive, is that enough of that?
Oh, please, yes, enough.
Enough of that. Okay, Tim, is that enough of that?
Absolutely.
Absolutely enough of that. Putting that in my notes. Enough of that. Okay, good. So, Tim, you know, obviously, like, this is a game with two very clear stories, right? There's a story of how it started where it didn't go particularly great, and then it did start to go great. But before we come on to the people that changed the game, and I think there are some very clear performances that changed the game, and they're the players that have been really performing for us over the last couple of weeks and changing our fortunes generally. But the Bernd Leno thing is weird to me. Somehow, I don't know how, somehow, it seems like Bernd Leno is in this weird position where people are always wanting some other guy to be the goalkeeper, whether that's Emi Martinez, who granted looked great at the end of last season and has started the season well, or it's let's go get David Raya in the transfer window, whatever the case may be. But all he's done since arriving is mostly, not universally, but mostly been fantastic. And he saves this cup tie for us with not just good goalkeeping, but brave goalkeeping. And I thought he did well on the set pieces with a real threat there in Andy Carroll. Carroll stung his palms a few times. He held it pretty well. And then he makes the absolutely critical intervention that saves the cup tie, and he shows real bravery to make sure that he's able to get it away. Look, no keeper's going to go through a season without making an error, but I'm a Bernd Leno fan. I certainly think, does your keeper have to be the best in the world to win things? I don't think so. You'd like that. But if it's a position that's well handled by a guy who's doing a good job, for me, you just check it off the list and move on. So I certainly regard Leno in that category. So were you impressed by, I mean, how could you not be impressed by Leno? But what are your thoughts about him in this game and generally?
Yeah, he made he makes a massive intervention there in the last minute, and it's like you say, it's not so much the first save from Carroll, although his positioning makes that a really, really difficult shot for Carroll anyway, because he's covering most of the goal, but it's the second one. Where you can really easily break an arm or an elbow doing that, and that was incredibly brave, and it was an excellent intervention, and I think you're right. Like, Leno just occupies this weird sweet spot where I don't think anyone thinks he's the problem by any means. I still don't think he quite dominates his area well enough in terms of aerial balls in particular. I also still don't think he's brilliant playing out from the back. I think he's okay. His
long passing is not good.
Yeah. But, like he does that, like the sand wedge kind of thing, and it doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't always work. So, like, those are things he could sharpen up on. I think his shot stopping is excellent. It really, really is. You remember that double save at Spurs in his first season? You know, his his reflexes are really sharp. I think he's really good at kind of coming off of his line and making himself really big with that kind of starfish movement and all of that. Like I think all of his fundamentals on those are really, really good. But I think you're right. I think it does him down to say he hasn't been a problem. Like, he has been better than that. He's been good. I'd probably stop slightly short of saying outstanding or excellent. No, I wouldn't call anyone an idiot for saying that, put it that way. And I think the thing you'd say about Leno as well is that he's actually at a good age for a goalkeeper. What is he, like 27, 28? Like, there's a reasonable expectation that he will get better as well. And it was interesting. Like, I don't know what his contract situation is, and that's
he's
quite
28,
interesting.
by the way. He'll be 29 in
28.
March. So I mean, but a good goalkeeper age. So.
Yeah. That's still like a decent age for a goalkeeper, and you're still, a goalkeeper's peak is very much like early, maybe even mid-30s.
Yeah. Emile Martinez, by comparison, is like 7 months younger. Same difference.
Yeah, precisely. So again, he's another one of that, like, the few players in the squad who's in like a nice age bracket, who's not right at the beginning or right at the end. And it's, it will be quite interesting to see what happens with his contract, whether Arsenal are trying to offer him a new one, or we know that Arteta said that Arsenal are trying to get another goalkeeper, and I think we've had a bit of clarity on the Renarsson thing, that essentially he was always intended to be the third goalkeeper, not the second goalkeeper, and that he was a bit more of a Matt Macey replacement than a Martinez replacement, and Arteta wants to sort that in this window, and that makes a bit more sense, I guess. I still think the Renarsson signing is still it always looked very rushed to me. It was like, fuck, we need a goalkeeper, and the goalkeeping coach like, well, I worked with this guy before. Is he any good? Yeah. How long have we got left of the window? 1 week. Yes, he's great. Go and get him. Like, it always felt a bit rushed to me. So it'd be really interesting to see what happens with Leno's contracts. And we're hearing that Rob Holding has signed a new deal as well, and he's in that age bracket as well of like 25, where he's probably still got some upward trajectory to go, and we don't have to, like, you don't have to make a definitive call on those players. I think on your young players, like on your Willocks and Nelsons and Nketiahs, when they're like 21, you kind of start to have to make a call. Or if you're going to give someone their last big contract when they're 29, 30, or in goalkeeping terms a little bit older, then you have to make a call. Like, is this guy going to decline? But yeah, like I thought Leno was excellent in this game. Not just on that save. I think one of the things he's beginning to develop that I quite like is, ideally, if Arsenal were better, like, the sort of goalkeeper a top team needs is the sort of goalkeeper that might only be engaged once or twice a game, but makes those big interventions when they're necessary. I think most goalkeepers look good when they're getting peppered with shots, and in this game, Leno didn't have an awful lot to do. But then in the last minute, we needed a really big moment from him, and we got it. And that to me is a really, really encouraging sign. And I probably still in the camp that eventually I'd like someone maybe of a slightly higher pedigree, but I'm not like rushing Leno out the door, and which I'm sure he'll be delighted to hear. And I'm open to the idea that he can get better.
Yeah, I am too, and I do think that he will be delighted to hear that you have decided to let him stay at the club. So,
yes.
Kudos to him for getting the Tim Stillman endorsement, which God knows I'm desperate for myself. Well, look, I think can we do this quickly, Clive? Because I think it deserves it.
What's that mean? But
I don't think it's the bulk of the podcast by any means, which is already 50 minutes in the making. Pablo Mari. I think this is a case of two things being true. It being true that he has played pretty well recently and was pretty good in this game in particular. And also true that maybe people are running away a little bit with the praise for the performances he's putting in. There were still a couple of moments here that are a little bit worrying. They did have 2 point-blank chances. I'm not putting that all on Marie. I think he was good in the air. I think he distributed okay. This is a player who is playing better than I expected of him. And I have to hold my hand up and say, I was really worried about this transfer. I still am not saying that I'm prepared to say it looks great, but he's certainly trending towards someone who looks like a usable, functional part of our squad. I think maybe people are getting over their ski tips with the performance, but I'm curious where you stand on that. I mean, I know there are people that are going to say he deserves the praise. I will turn it over to you to determine whether you would like to bestow him with that.
Yeah, he deserves the praise. He deserves some praise. I think, again, it's a signing of where it's how you walk in a room. These people weren't sure about this deal. I didn't know anything about his player before he came onto our radar, so the first thing I did was go onto my friendly YouTube and I watched the World Club Cup final when he marked in a back, I'm sure it was in a back 3 or back 4. But anyway, he marked Salah. And I watched that game. I watched the whole 90 minutes. And he was fantastic. And that is like top Liverpool. World Club champions Liverpool, at the peak of their powers. And he managed him really well. Somebody who's got rapid pace. So immediately I was quite excited by him. I thought, if you can do that with no pace, you've got to be smart positioning. You've got to know when to go tight, know when to drop off early. Good player. And then he came in, got injured, his slow start. But the game that's actually doubled down on it for me was the very first game after lockdown. I know he got injured within 2 or 3 minutes, and he was off after 20 minutes against Man City. But the fact he got picked, and he looked so senior. If you watch those 20 minutes, he was the leader of the back line. Right, and everyone was giving him the ball, and he was pointing. I'm thinking, you're quite good. We lost him again. He's come in, and as soon as he comes in, he starts leading again. Right, so it's not just, we can all see he's quite heavy-legged. He's not super sharp. Hang on, Per Mertesacker was pretty heavy-legged and not super sharp. There's different ways of defending, and he seems to make other people feel comfortable, and that's a good thing. Right, that's a good thing. So when I look at him and Gabriel, I don't look at that side of the pitch anymore. He's 26, Gabriel's 22. We may have done something right here. We wanted 2 left-footed centre-halves. We've got them. I tend to look at Man City at the moment a lot. They've got 4 centre-backs. They've got Stones, Diaz, Laporte, and Nathan Ake. They've got Nathan Ake and Laporte as their 2 left-footed centre-backs. How much did they cost? Nearly 80, 90 million. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I know it's hard to compare, but it's a good thing to have 2 left-footed centre-backs. You still got your build-up. Now you've got to get our 2 right-footed centre-backs. That's the key thing, because all our right-footers are going, or should go, and we've got one out on loan we're not sure about, or the manager's not sure about him, although he's looking quite good. And we've got Rob Holding. I think he just bombed Callum Chambers out of the club if he signs that contract. So in my opinion, we need to decide what we do with Saliba, or we need to buy a first level right foot centre back. But I've been quite impressed with him. And if you look at him, he leads, but he pulls the line up. And I think a lot of what was happened in his last games when he's played is that our line is higher when he plays. And I think he leads that. When David Luiz plays, I know Newcastle didn't come on to us, they didn't really show up too much in this game. My views, we drop away, particularly under stress, makes the pitch big, kills the midfield, kills our build-up. So I do like Marie. I think he's brave. I think he's an underestimated good player. But my mind still likes Gabriel a bit more, but it's not a problem. Exactly what you want. 2 good players for every position.
Yeah, I have to say, I'm really torn because I think sometimes we are guilty of overrating mediocre players because they pull on the Arsenal shirt and aren't a complete calamity. And as a result of doing that, and I don't just mean fans, I mean the club even, we are now a mid-table club instead of a top 4 club. And I'm not saying that necessarily in the context of Pablo Mari. I think Pablo Mari can still turn out to be a decent squad player for us. I don't know that he's going to be a starting central defender for us, although, he could continue to develop and prove me wrong. Of course, I'm not saying the book is closed there, but do you have a thought on this, Tim? Because the reason I bring it up is, there's reporting from David Ornstein that Rob Holding has signed a new deal. I'd love to know what the wages are on that. But again, it is a weird thing from we think he's off to Newcastle this summer to he's now got a new deal. Now, the new deal could be to protect the value, and ultimately you say, we can still move him on, and we might even do it in the summer. I certainly don't think that's what this is about, but I mean, do you have a feeling on where that balance is? You don't want to just run people out of the club who have performed well for you, but you also want to make sure that you're not committing to the people that got you to the level you're at now, to the people that make your ceiling 8th place. You want your ceiling to be, as it turns out, the 1st place, the people that win the title. So do you have a sense of where we are with that? I mean, Marie certainly impressing a bit. Holding definitely has impressed me, but I have questions about whether the talent level of these players is the direction we want to be going.
So I think Holding and Marie, I mean, with Holding, right, it depends on the conversation. If the conversation was, we see you as the starter for the next 5 years, here's a massive new contract, no. I suspect and hope the conversation was more, we see you as one of our 4 or 5. Arteta's had a good look at the 20 centre-backs that we've got. He's decided who he wants and who he doesn't. Contracts have dictated that to a degree. Gabriel's brought in big money, 22. We know we're committed to him. Mari always made, as soon as we got Gabriel, Mari made a hell of a lot. Mari did make sense to me, and I went back and read the profile I wrote when we signed him on loan last January, and I said my sense is that this is more of a, ignoring the left-footed thing, this is more of a like Mustafi Chambers replacement than like a Koscielny replacement. This is a guy who I think is going to come in to provide backup. We signed Gabriel, yep, brilliant, because they're very, very similar, Mari and Gabriel. I think Mari's build, because he's built and he looks so, he doesn't look like Mertesacker, but his build is so Mertesacker-esque. He's actually much more of a Koscielny type of defender. He's touch tight. He comes out of his hole. He gets up the defender's backside. He really covers that left back spot well. That's exactly what he did at Flamengo. Flamengo played a high line. Their left back was Felipe Luis, who for my money has been one of the best left backs in Europe over the last decade. Hugely underrated, hugely unfortunate to have played at the same time as Marcelo, because he's brilliant. But he'd been playing for Flamengo, and he was filling in that left back spot while Felipe Luis was bombing forward. And I thought, okay, this makes some sense. And then as soon as we bought Gabriel, I thought, yeah, this really makes sense, because they're both so similar in terms of the type of defender they are. I agree with Clive. I think Gabriel's ceiling is higher. I do think Marie at the moment has got more of that serenity. I think Gabriel still lacks that, but I think that's largely due to his age, and hopefully he will get that eventually. But I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, brilliant. That's 2 centre-backs on the left side who are really similar, who do almost entirely the same job. So you can just, you plug one in and plug one out, and it doesn't really impact your team. And so all of everything's on the right side, right? Because Socrates is a right-sided defender. He's out. Luis is right-sided, although he can play on the left. He's out. Staff is right-sided. We tried to offer him a new contract, remember? And maybe that's important in the Holding discussion. But for me, with Holding, I think this makes sense, provided that he hasn't been told, you're the starter, the new captain, here's loads and loads of money.
They did call him an emerging leader in the article, but who knows what that means,
Yeah, precisely. Basically, he's not a bad egg. Like, he comes in, he does his job, and I think that Arteta is dealing maybe with a little bit of a viper's nest in terms of the dressing room. There's lots of leaking and stuff. And look at, again, I know all of these players are out of favour, but look at who they're getting rid of. They're really pushing to get rid of. Mustafi, Kolasinac, Ozil, all of whom are very good friends. Like, it looks like Arteta's trying to weed out, understandably, maybe some cliques. And, he's spoken recently about when you've got players not playing, means you've got players that are unhappy and he wants them out. Like, Holding is not going to do that. Like, Holding, I think Holding would be thinking, okay, I want to fight for, I think the right centre-back spot is up for grabs. I'm playing at the moment. I'm playing well. Yeah, I'm going to fight for it. I don't get the sense he's been told it's yours. I get the sense he's been told there's 2 spots there and one of them is yours, and how well you play will dictate whether you're first choice or second choice. I think the other thing about Holding that we should acknowledge, by the way, is maybe I still have questions. I don't have questions about him as a pure defender. I maybe have questions about the way he uses the ball, albeit I don't think he uses it badly. But, he's not David Luiz in possession. But I think the thing we should say about Holding now, or the thing that I've been thinking about Holding, there are 3 separate occasions now where he's come into the team and had a run in the team and looked really good. There was the end of his first season where he came in, and to be fair, that was in a back 3, but looked really good. We all loved him at that point. There was that section of time under Unai Emery where he played on the left-hand side of a back 3, looked really, really good. And actually, he was a big part of that team that went unbeaten for quite a long time. I know we've had that discussion about the underlying metrics, but that was a team that was winning games. He was in it. He got injured, came out. He basically and then the shit show that ensued, like the end of Emery's first season, last season, he wasn't really a part of that. And now he's come back into the team. And don't get me wrong, he has been a part of this like quite bad run until recently, but he's playing well again, and so that tells me there's perhaps more to come from this player. He's had 3 spells, like good unbroken spells in the team, and he's looked really good in all of them. And I do think that there is an extent to which you kind of should reward players. He's come in, he's played really well. We're told that Arteta was the one who put the stop on the loan to Newcastle, which actually at the time I thought was weird, because I think Luiz got like a small injury at the time, and I was thinking, okay, like Luiz is out for a few games, but surely that doesn't necessitate that you stop a player going out on loan, which maybe suggests.
I think also, Tim, I think Mari had a bit of a complication on his injury, and that maybe, and obviously Saliba come back not quite right, so maybe they just did a reversal.
Yeah, so for me, Holding, that makes some sense to me. And he's 25. This is not his next contract. Holding is his last, big contract, and that's when you really have to make the call. So we're protecting the value. He's homegrown, etc., etc. It's more what happens with Saliba interests me, because that says to me that there's one more spot left in that defence. We've got the 2 left-siders. We've got 1 right-sider now. I think Chambers will go. So to me, it looks like the question is, does Saliba prove himself to be the right-sided centre-back? And we brought that guy, is it Rekik from Hertha Berlin? I know he's gone into the under-23s, but that's another little sighter to me. And that definitely ends Mavropanos as well, I think, that signing. So to me, the question is more around Saliba than Holding.
It is interesting because I guess, look, tying down your 25-year-old English players to contracts is probably never a bad move. It's probably not going to lock you into a bad situation unless they're terrible, and Rob Holding is not terrible. It gives us some flexibility. He's certainly a sellable asset as he enters his prime. By central defender age, I think he's more early prime than you might say of like a winger or forward. So yeah, I don't really have a problem with it. I think the issue for me is I just look at that core group, Tim, that you've outlined, and I say, who's the elite center back? Who's the center back that we have that's going to step forward and be a star? I still think the jury's out on Gabriel, not whether he's good or not, but whether he has that top level elite capability. I think you feel similarly. And if I have spoken wrongly there, you certainly correct the record, but I think you've gone on record that we're still seeing a little bit about what he's about, which you'd expect. Rob Holding is not going to be super elite in my view. A good player. Pablo Mari not going to be super elite. The irony is, I think of all these players in terms of the way they were scouted and what was said about them before they arrived, or before we get to watch them. I thought Saliba was the one that we were kind of getting in on early because he had that ceiling, that elite ceiling. We'll see how that plays out. So I just, Clive has talked about our midfield and talking about how we had a lot of 3-star hotels that now maybe look like 2-star hotels in some cases. I kind of hope we aren't committing to a real a quorum of 3-star hotels in central defense as our plan there. And it remains to be seen. I think a guy like Holding has done really, really well. And what his ceiling is, now we're probably going to get to find out. So the last bit of this podcast has to be to praise the players who came on and changed the game, though. And I you know what? I don't want to do a big Granit Xhaka section. Not because I have an agenda against Granit Xhaka. I just think, Clive, like, Granit Xhaka came on and did Granit Xhaka stuff. He pushed the ball forward. You know, he hit the ball with intention and authority forward towards players in the front line, and like what a difference that makes. It's a great ball to set up the second goal. He made a difference. There's absolutely no denying it. A little bit of progressiveness in central midfield goes a long, long way. And I just think Granit Xhaka is and was in this game what he's always been, which is a serviceable player who has some skills that really help the team and some liabilities that have held us back. And I was happy to see him come on and play well. Certainly, it's an audition for the place next to Partey because it's between him and Ceballos. In my view, it should probably just about be Ceballos. But if it winds up being Xhaka, I won't be devastated about it. But I guess the thing I would just say is we're not learning anything new about this player, right? He came in, did the things we know he can do, and in this game, they were very valuable.
Yeah, I think this weekend's been a real weekend for squad building. We've had a good look at a few people, and we're making some decisions in the transfer market, getting people out the door, signing on, holding. We haven't really got centre midfield sorted yet. The main addition, we haven't really seen him. And everyone else we've seen before. And, you know, they have good days and bad days. That's the basic truth of it. And there's nothing they're going to tell us. The difference was we could look at Xhaka a different light because we had Joe Willock playing there. And Joe Willock does not understand how to do support line runs. It's as simple as that. He goes off into a different stratosphere. Whereas Xhaka supports line the ball much better, supports the person who's going to receive the ball. He gets an angle to get it back off them to get the next run. And when he receives it, it's 1-2 touch, third man run, kid, Tierney, goal. Right? Very, very, very simple. But it's all done in your preparation time before the ball gets to you. That's what he's much better at because he's an experienced international captain that's played many, many times in that left-hand side of a double pivot. Really simple. And I thought he came on, and some days he's a strange player, isn't he? Some days he does that, you think, cranky, I'm starting to like him. Then he does a Burnley thing, right? Or he takes some down in the box, or he does something stupid. Every time you fall in love with him, he upsets you, right? So I think we've seen everything from him. But much like Holding, I think there's a level to him. That level is acceptable when we're playing well. You know, I really think that. The reason why I think Holding maybe have got ahead of maybe a Chambers, unfortunate for Chambers injury-wise, but I think he's got the character to help a team in different phases. Granit Xhaka's got the character. I don't think he's got the high ceiling. If we want to get to where we want to get to, we need somebody different than him. I think this is a major part of how we play. And so whereas Holding, we're looking at Holding and we're thinking you're going to be third, fourth centre back if we find that elite right-sider. We may already have him, but we're not sure yet. With Granit Xhaka, I'm not so sure he will settle for that role, for the Holding role, just due to who he is. He's a leader, he's a captain, he's a senior pro. He wants to play every week. In my opinion, we need something different next to Partey to go on. Somebody that can make Holding be protected a lot more and make those players do a lot better. So this is more of a key decision for what we do going forward with Granit Xhaka, and I really think it's key. I think it's a massive decision for us because everything for me is around that midfield 2/3, what that looks like.
Yeah, I agree.
And that player isn't here. It just isn't here. And we need to, we're talking about Nketiah, we're talking about Joe Willock and Nelson. If we're going to scoop up funds, then I want to see it go on that position there as well as a creative position to get to the real elite level we want to get to. You want
Basuma next to Partey is what you're saying.
I like Basuma. I watched him yesterday, and I'll give you a bit of feedback. I watched him closely, and he's a true six. He wants to sit there, and I watched him. He switches on when the other team are about to do something dangerous. So you want to play a 4-2-3-1, and you want Basuma to cover your fullbacks when the ball breaks down. Perfect. Tierney goes off. I'm going to sit on the left half space and kill that position. I'm going to do the centre space and the left space, and same on the right-hand side. He's a killer in duels, but I don't think he actually goes and gets the ball enough. I think he's quite happy waiting for broken play. That may be what Brighton are demanding of him. But I looked at him and thought, yeah, you're good. You're really good. I think if we play a 4-2-3-1, you almost want two players that could do three-man's jobs. That allows us to really carry a front four diamond with a fullback joining, making it 5, sometimes 6 people up front. You've got 2 people there to create your base. So So I do like him. I don't think that's Granit Xhaka. But Granit Xhaka does a lot of good things. He does a lot of good things passing-wise that Basuma hasn't got that range yet. So it's one to watch, but I'm looking forward to today when we develop past him, but it isn't there yet. And every time he keeps reminding us, I look at Ceballos, and I don't rate Ceballos as much as I rate Xhaka, and that isn't that much. And only we know what we've got, right? And he's coming to last year, and he'll be off in the summer. So it's what it is, mate. Just got to watch that and see whether we can scoop some funds up from behind the sofa.
I would say this about Xhaka versus like an El Neni, right? Shaq's a player who, if you just want to look at the things he does well, he probably does them at a borderline elite level, like definitely a top 4 team level. But it's his weaknesses that are a big, big problem. The lack of mobility, the sometimes the brain dead giveaways, the sometimes the extra touch he needs, the slowness moving it. But when you look at like his progressive passing or the way he plays it out to the wings and stuff, like he can be elite at certain things. Whereas with El Neni, I don't know if his liabilities per se are as hurtful as Xhaka's. He just doesn't do anything elite. He doesn't do anything that really helps you. He doesn't do anything that you would say, wow, what a difference maker there. So a Xhaka can be a good player if you can minimize the liabilities and emphasize the strong suits. The problem is I think Partey does the things at an elite level that Xhaka does, and there can be a bit of a duplication of roles there. And as you pointed out, when Xhaka's in there, he wants to be the guy doing it. So
do you think they'll mix? I
don't think they mix. I don't. Now, granted, Xhaka does to the left what Partey does to the right, and maybe that really works. You have two players that can play similar. I think they both have that pass out to the wing. That's a good one. I think Partey can punch the passes to Smith Rowe a little better than Xhaka and step into space and do some of those things. I feel that the problem with Xhaka and Partey is Xhaka wants to be the hub of the passing when he's in there, and I think we have to sort of hand the wheel over to Partey if we're going to do that. We'll see. So then look, I mean, the goal that we get that wins the game, I mean, I know we get a second one, and it's great that Aubameyang gets that. It's good to see him get on the score sheet, and it's a typical Aubameyang goal, a tap in from a good run. But the goal that Smith Rowe gets, I can't help it, Tim. Like, when I look at Smith Rowe, what I see is the player we kind of hoped Willock would be early in the season when we were desperate for a guy to play between the lines, but with a much better technical level, right? So we were saying, get Willock in there. He can run into the box, second man run. He can score some goals, but he just can't pass, and he doesn't have the touch. He doesn't have the awareness. He does like to get into the box, and he can be a difference maker there, but Smith Rowe has all of it. He has the touch. He has the distribution. He has the awareness of space. This goal is a really well taken goal. I mean, the way he moves, the way he sets it up, the way he receives it off his chest, and the way he strikes it are all clean, good technique. I think a little credit for Lacazette deserved as well, who's really coming back to the fore. So that goal for me, I mean, just highlighting again the importance of Emile Smith Rowe. Is he for you becoming a player, maybe even more than Saka and Martinelli, not in terms of his quality, but in terms of where he plays and what he does there, that we don't seem to have an alternative for?
Yeah, definitely. And it is down to his quality as well. I know exactly what you mean, and I've said the same thing. It's just like someone doing that at a competent level has made such a difference. But I do think that maybe downplays the quality that he actually has of the things he's doing, like that goal against West Brom, for example. This goal, these aren't bog standard goals that guys are scoring all over the league. And I've said many times before, I watched Smith Rowe play in the under-18s, and it was clear that he was head and shoulders above everybody. And the only players I've really ever seen be head and shoulders above everybody at that age level is usually because they are literally head and shoulders above everyone, and they have a couple of kilos extra muscle. That wasn't the case with Smith Rowe. He wasn't built any differently to everyone else. It was his technical level that was just so superior. And I think it's worth saying as well, when he came into the team 2 years ago, he threatened this. He got goals in the Europa League group stage, got goals in the League Cup early rounds, and that was when he was 18. And you could see the talent was there, but obviously we haven't really seen it for 2 years for reasons that everyone's familiar with. And I just think with this goal as well, and again, we spoke about this a bit on the Instant Reaction podcast, and Paul was saying as soon as that ball went to him, he kind of sat forward a bit, and so did I, and so did I think all of us did. All of us thought, it's weird, isn't it? That sixth sense you get for when a player brings a ball down and you think, yeah, he might do this, actually. He looks in control here. Whereas when a chance like that falls to a Nelson or a Willock, you don't quite do that. And in fact, I'd say maybe a comparable chance in a different way fell to Nelson in the first half. And, unfortunately, I know it's super harsh in terms of, in terms of, it wasn't an awful, it wasn't an absolute. It's not like he miskicked the ball or anything. He decided to take a touch when he shouldn't have. But it's sorry, this is the top level and those are the margins. Whereas when Smith Rowe, I think it's the way Smith Rowe moves as well. He moves so with so much purpose that you kind of it gives you a trust in him. Just out the corner of your eye, when you see him move, you think, yeah, give the ball to this guy. Because we often talk, don't we, about you can tell what senior players think of a young player by how often they give him the ball. But I think we underestimate how much time players actually have to think on the pitch. I don't think a player has time to go, oh yeah, that's Emile Smith Rowe, he's good, I'll pass him the ball. I think there's something in a player's stature and the way they move, because you've only got a split second to make that decision when you're on the pitch. And when you've got to snap out a pass, or Lacazette's got to head the ball on, or clip the ball over the top, you've only got a split second. And there is something, almost, it is almost like a telepathy or a sixth sense. I think there is something like that in footballers, where it's just this guy's moving and I can see the way he looks right. It just looks right, this movement.
Very much so.
And you get it as a fan as well. You get it as a fan. And I don't know when it happens or how much football you have to watch for it to happen. But when someone has a shot or someone makes a movement and you think, yeah, this is going in. And because you get the opposite thing as well, right? You know when someone's going to miss a chance. Like when Tierney pulls that ball back to Reece Nelson, I was thinking, not sure about this. And again, when you look back, it's like how I think I thought that, I'm really, really convinced I thought that, but that's in a quarter of a second, and you don't really get time to process a clear thought like that. But there's just something about the way a player looks. I don't know whether it's their stance, the way they carry themselves, maybe it's just physically the way they move themselves, but you can just tell. And you can tell with Smith Rowe as well. And he didn't get everything right in this game. There were times he tried to move the ball around corners and it didn't quite come off. But for me, give me the player that tries to pass the ball round the corner or flick the ball round the corner to get it forward and it doesn't quite come off and it's cleared, rather than the guy who traps it and passes it backwards. And obviously you have to be judicious about exactly when you do that. You can't just do it every single time. But yeah, he always looks like he's going to make something happen. And I'm looking at the players we talk about, because this is a new player in the team, right? And so whenever a new player comes in, you start to compare them to older players. There will come a point where Smith Rowe plays enough games where we stop, mentioning players like Rosicky or Ramsey or Ozil, and we'll just say he's Smith Rowe. Yeah. But we're talking about players like Ozil, like Rosicky, like Ramsey, all of whom are actually quite different. Ramsey's the end products guy, Ozil's the creative guy, and he's got a bit of both of those in his game. And that's the thing I felt quite keen to say in previous podcasts when we were talking up his creative properties. This guy runs into the box and he can finish, and yeah, that was a superb goal, and it's in line with. I just on a very selfish personal level, I'm always delighted when I look at a player at youth level and I think, yeah, this guy could make it, and they do. It makes my ego feel very nice.
Yeah, and over on the, by the way, I'm always happy to help make your ego feel nice as well. If you need that, if you need ego stroking, happy to do it for you. So David Hartrick came on the Patreon pod, the Smith Rowe Spotlight pod. He's Opta's in-ground analyst for Huddersfield. And the point he made is that there was a game where Smith Rowe was the man of the match, but he was still despondent afterwards because he'd missed a couple of goal scoring chances, and the coach had to actually sort of talk him out of the funk because he was upset about missing the chance to score. You love hearing that, right? That he's got that mentality. He wants to score goals, and I think you can be a playmaker who only wants to create chances, but the ones that also want to get in the box and score goals themselves, I mean, that's another level. That's rare, and I think he can definitely do both. I guess, look, you have to talk about character sometimes. I think it says a lot about Aubameyang's desperation to get back among the goals and Tierney's character after 120 minutes in a cup tie that's won. Here's Tierney busting a gut to overlap so he can slide a pass across to Aubameyang, who's busting a gut to get in a position to score a goal, at the very end of 120 minutes of football. It says a lot about them. I think it says a lot about Aubameyang wanting to get back among the goals and just Tierney's character and work rate in general. And, like I said, I don't think Arteta would have drawn it up that way, having them play 120 minutes, but that's how it worked. And it's funny that they are there to finish the game in style at the end. The last point I just want to make about this, though, Clive, is as we look at ESR, I have sort of an interesting trick challenging question for you here. Not who's better, not who's the most important player, but among Saka, Martinelli, and Smith Rowe, if you had to pick one right now who could play every league game, start every league game for the rest of the season, it would probably be Smith Rowe, wouldn't it? Just in terms of not having anyone who can add what he adds in the position he plays. No,
I wouldn't quite agree with that. I would go with Saka.
You'd still go with Saka. In terms of, not talent, just in terms of whose involvement is most important to our success.
I still think Saka is
okay. No, that's a totally fair answer.
I think in the recent last 4 games, we've seen somebody come into that number 10 position, and we've all felt rejuvenated by that extra player, and it's been good. And I think Lacazette's also had a big part to play there. I think that combination has given that central zone a lift, and it's connected us to our wide zones, and we've done fine. I do think Martinelli was the trigger for all of this. I do think Martinelli first half against Man City was the guy that gave me some hope. Because he just came on and said, "Sod this, let's get going." And so I think he was a trigger, and then we sort of led from there, as per se. Saka for me is the real jewel. I think he's going to go really, really high, but hey, it doesn't really matter. I hope I'm wrong. I hope all 3 of them go high. You know what I mean? So I think on Smith Rowe, when Tim was talking, I couldn't help but feel it. I think when he was talking about why do you feel certain things as they're approaching the ball, and it really is a technique. Actually, it's a technique of stride pattern. When you watch Thierry Henry running on goal and he opens his body and gets his stride pattern right, speeds up his feet, plants his standing foot there, he's going in. Aubameyang, the same thing at the end of last season. If you watch Joe Willock run up to a ball, his stride pattern is varied, and you're not too sure what's going to happen. He needs to slow down, calm down. We call it fire and ice. Calm down, get your stride pattern right, get your contact right. It's the details of your techniques, details of your body shape, details of your stride pattern. Standing foot in the right place, that leads to the contact. And that's why when you say, I'm not sure why, but we all know it when you see it, because it looks right. You know what I mean? And it's all in those. Well, no, we do like lots of shooting drills, and I always look at the stride pattern. I always tell people to focus on the stride pattern, whether they're adults or not. The stride pattern dictates it. You can literally tell. We do penalty drills. You can tell when someone's going to score a penalty based on their stride pattern as they approach the ball. You can tell. You can say goal, miss, goal. It's all in that. And I think some people have that naturally when they're confident. When they're not confident, that goes wrong. Buendia scored a goal against Barnsley the other week. This is what convinced me that I'd love Arsenal to buy him. The long ball over the defence, and you watch him change his stride pattern as the ball was coming towards him, and he takes it first time on the volley. I thought, oh my God, you can see the flight. That's something you can't teach. You can see the flight from miles away. Adjust your stride pattern when the ball's in the air, and get perfect contact on the volley before it hits the floor. I'm thinking, technically, that's quality. You know what I mean? And when people have it, you know it. And I think Smith Rowe has it, and I hope he continues because he's looking fantastic.
Yeah, I'm really excited about him. I mean, it's going to get a little bit tedious listening to us praise Saka, Smith Rowe, and hopefully Martinelli if he can stay fit. Do we have an update on Martinelli? I haven't seen one on the ankle injury.
Not yet. They said he's had a scan today, so we'll probably hear something tomorrow or Wednesday.
Yeah, and look, I'm not going to do the outrage thing about, he's picked him in a FA Cup third round tie, got to go. I mean, look, he's bending down to get a ball and warm up. It's a freak thing. The real issue with Martinelli is you just hope there's not a long-term durability concern there, right? Because that's the only thing that looks like it could stop him from going to the top would be that. So let's just keep our fingers crossed that it's good news. I would suggest that at a very least, in terms of the left of the front 3, we have options there. Saka can play there with Pepe on the right. Aubameyang can certainly play there with Pepe or Saka on the right. I'm not going to say I'm not worried about it, but I don't think that halts our progress if he's out for a bit. But we'll keep our fingers crossed. It's Crystal Palace, correct, on Thursday?
Correct.
At the empty Emirates, for whatever that's worth. And hopefully we just keep the good times rolling. I imagine he's going to want to pick the players we know he's going to pick. And maybe the big talking point now for the rest of the season is just how he manages the fixtures with the players that have made themselves indispensable to this resurgence. But long may it continue. But yeah, we were always going to win this. It's the Arsenal Invitational. So, what else was going to happen? In any event, thanks for joining us. We'll have pods throughout the week as we always do on the Patreon side. And then another one for you here after the game Thursday. So that'll probably show up on Friday, to be fair. In any event, that'll do it. No end of the pod banter since we covered it, I thought, quite brilliantly at the beginning. Tim's on Twitter at Stillberto. Thanks, Tim.
My pleasure as always.
Clive's on Twitter at ClivePFC. Thanks, Clive.
Thank you very much.
Am I mistaken or did we draw already? For the
no,
not yet. It's coming up, right?
It's tonight.
It's in about
tonight,
15 minutes.
Okay.
Time of recording, obviously.
So those of you who have listened all the way to the end of the pod, the one or two of you, you can shout at the device you're listening to who we drew, and we won't hear you, so it won't help. In any event, we'll talk about that on another pod. We love you, and we'll talk to you after Arsenal 10, Palace 0.